We've just received breaking news that's sending shockwaves through the nation, straight from the federal courthouse in New York. In a completely unexpected turn of events, actor Brad Pitt made a surprise appearance, walking in alone, clutching a heavily fortified metal briefcase. According to inside sources, it contains explosive evidence. Material powerful enough to blow apart the case surrounding music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Meanwhile, the mystery surrounding Leonardo DiCaprio's whereabouts continues to deepen. This is no longer just another high-profile courtroom drama. What follows is the exact testimony and evidence Brad Pitt delivered before a federal judge on the 18th day of the trial. Be warned, some of the content may be disturbing, surreal, and almost too shocking to believe. What exactly did Pitt bring that caused Diddy to completely unravel? So much so that he lashed out at his own attorney in open court? And where's Leonardo DiCaprio? His fate remains veiled in mystery. This wasn't a glamorous Hollywood premiere. This was a high-security showdown. No red carpets, no flashing lights, just Brad Pitt, solemn and silent, eyes steeled, hands gripping a vault of secrets that could annihilate the empire Diddy has spent 3 decades quietly constructing. "I didn't come here to negotiate," Pitt stated. "I came to bury his empire and save my friend before it's too late." Outside the courthouse, chaos unfolded like a scene from a thriller. Just moments ago, less than 10 minutes according to some witnesses, Brad Pitt emerged from the building, saying nothing, but radiating an unshakable intensity. Clutched in his grip was the infamous metal suitcase, which he solemnly handed over to court security. Insiders claim it holds the final nail in the coffin for Diddy's defense. Witnesses inside the courtroom described the atmosphere as suffocating. Earlier this morning, the trial resumed with razor-wire tension. Now entering its 4th grueling week, the case against Sean Diddy Combs has been unraveling piece by piece, laden with horrifying accusations, human trafficking, extortion, and sexual abuse. Former assistants and ex-confidants have painted a portrait of an empire cloaked not in glamour, but in control, manipulation, and terror. Still, no one, not even the most hardened court reporters, could have anticipated what came next. Without warning, the heavy courtroom doors swung open. Silence rippled through the space like a chill. Brad Pitt walked in. His expression was grim, determined. Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward him in disbelief. This wasn't the first time his name had surfaced during the proceedings. A previous witness, Diddy's former assistant Mia, had testified under oath that she'd seen Diddy assault singer Cassie Ventura at the 2012 Cannes premiere of Pitt's film Killing Them Softly. But today, Brad Pitt wasn't just a name in someone else's testimony. Today, he had come to speak for himself. "I'm not here for myself," Pitt began, his voice low but resonating with unwavering conviction as he stood at the witness stand. "I'm here for my friend, Leonardo DiCaprio, who vanished under mysterious circumstances more than a month ago. I'm here to reveal the truth about Sean Combs and to defend the lives of the innocent people he's destroyed. I will not rest until justice is done and Leo is brought home safe." Leonardo DiCaprio, global superstar, humanitarian, household name, was missing. And now, somehow, this disappearance was being tied to the man already facing some of the most damning criminal accusations of the decade. Speculation filled the air like smoke, but Pitt stood firm, his gaze unblinking. He didn't waver as he launched into the full, harrowing account. "It began," he explained, "just over a month ago. Leonardo had seemingly vanished from the face of the earth. No texts, no phone calls, no signs of life. Brad, who had shared a 2-decade friendship with him, instantly knew something was terribly wrong. Leo doesn't just go silent," Brad said solemnly. "He's calculated, disciplined. He always checks in." When Leonardo failed to appear for their annual get-together in Malibu, an unbroken tradition for years, Brad's concern turned to dread. Alongside Leo's mother Ermeline and his sister, Brad launched a frantic search. They scoured his New York apartment, his LA mansion, even his quiet hideaway in the French countryside. All were untouched. His phone was dead. His social media? Silent. Not even a whisper. Police opened an investigation, but their updates were vague, their efforts seemingly futile. Hope began to fade until one night the silence was broken. An anonymous package appeared at Brad's Hollywood Hills estate. No sender name, just a plain brown envelope and a USB drive inside. With a heavy sense of foreboding, Brad inserted the USB into his computer. The screen flickered, static pulsing across the monitor as a grainy, low-resolution video loaded, clearly captured by an old security camera. What appeared on screen made Brad's blood run cold. Leonardo DiCaprio was slumped in a metal chair, wrists and ankles bound, his face bruised, lips bloodied, and clothes torn. The room around him was dimly lit, damp and decrepit, like the basement of a long, abandoned building. Then came the voice, distorted, mechanical, unidentifiable. Prepare $10 million within 48 hours. Involve the police, and he dies. The video ended with Leo struggling to lift his head, his battered eyes still managing to hold on to a faint, flickering trace of hope. Brad's first instinct was to call the police. But before he could dial, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Normally, he would have let it go to voicemail, but something, instinct, maybe fate, told him to answer. On the other end was Leonardo's voice, weak, shaky, urgent. Brad, I don't have long. They're not planning to release me or spare my family. They're cleaning house. Anyone who knows anything is being silenced. You need to protect my mom and sister. And listen carefully. I've documented everything, all of Diddy's crimes. It's all at my old place in Topanga Canyon, basement, steel box. Be careful. Diddy and his men are smart. If they suspect anything, they'll come for you too. And just like that, the line went dead. Without wasting a second, Brad sprang into action. The first thing he did was relocate Leonardo's mother and sister to his own mansion in Los Angeles, transforming it into a high-security sanctuary under constant watch. Their safety came first. Then, once he was sure they were protected, he set off alone, under the cover of darkness, for Topanga Canyon. Leo's old house sat tucked deep in the woods, a secluded hideaway he'd used to escape the relentless spotlight of Hollywood. Now it loomed like something out of a psychological thriller, quiet, cold, and ominous. Brad navigated the dusty interior with a flashlight. The place hadn't been touched in weeks, cobwebs in the corners, silence so thick it hummed. In the basement, behind a rusted electrical cabinet, he found it, a solid steel box with a biometric fingerprint lock. A moment of uncertainty washed over him. Then he remembered, years ago during a drunken, late-night conversation, Leo had casually shared the backup code with him, saying, "In case anything ever goes sideways." Brad entered the code. A quiet click echoed in the still air. He opened the box and immediately recoiled in horror. Inside was a trove of evidence so grotesque, so damning it made his stomach churn. Brad vomited on the spot, hands shaking as the contents of the steel vault glared back at him, a raw, unfiltered portrait of evil. Later, standing in court, Brad would confess, "I've acted in dozens of psychological thrillers, but nothing in fiction, nothing comes close to what I saw in that box." Back at home, still reeling from what he had discovered, Brad made what he thought was the right decision. He called the police. But that same night, before authorities could respond, his phone rang again. Another unknown number. On the line was a man claiming to be a federal officer, speaking with authority and urgency. He said Pitt was in danger, and that Diddy's people were already watching him. The caller advised Brad to leave the USB copy in a specific mailbox near a nearby park. He assured him this was protocol and for his own protection. "If you go public," the man warned, "they'll take you out before sunrise." Blaster rattled and unsure, Brad obeyed. He placed the USB in the Dropbox as instructed. Then he waited and waited. Days turned into a week, then 2. No updates, no movement on Leo's case. The police gave generic answers, no sign of the evidence he had handed over, no further contact from the officer. Then the realization hit him. "I'd been played," Brad told the court, eyes glassy. "That voice on the phone, it was probably one of Diddy's operatives. The moment I gave up that USB, I handed them the leverage." But luckily, Leo had thought ahead. Before disappearing, Leo had instructed Brad to always make a second copy of everything. Brad had followed through. He had stored the duplicate hard drive in a hidden safe behind the fireplace in his estate, a move that may have saved the entire case. And on the 18th day of Diddy's trial, that very backup was what Brad brought with him into the courthouse, locked inside the reinforced metal briefcase that caused such a stir. As Brad stood in front of the court, he handed the hard drive to the prosecution, his voice tight but determined. "I'm here today to make sure justice happens, to make sure the truth doesn't disappear with him." The courtroom fell into a chilling silence as the prosecution connected the hard drive to the main display. The lights dimmed. The first file loaded. File 1, The Purge. It began with a 12-minute audio recording Leonardo had secretly captured in 2020. The setting? A closed-door meeting at Diddy's private villa in the Cayman Islands. His voice, cold and calculating, echoed through the courtroom speakers as he spoke with 3 high-profile individuals: a global media tycoon, a prominent political figure, and a known transnational crime boss. "If this empire is going to stand," Diddy declared, "no loose ends. No one who talks walks away alive." Then came the bombshell. "I've already dealt with 3, he said. "You know who I mean." He was referring, almost certainly, to a famous Hollywood actor whose death in a mysterious plane crash in 2018 had long raised questions in conspiracy circles. Next, grainy footage from a hidden camera showed Diddy holding a handwritten list, reading off names like a grim roll call. At the top, Leonardo DiCaprio, marked as a priority target. A visible wave of horror washed across the courtroom for the sacrifice ceremony. The next video was even more disturbing. Shot on Leo's phone, it documented a secret gathering held in the wine cellar of a private estate in Paris, sometime in 2021. The footage opened on a crowd in masks and cloaks, standing in a candlelit circle. At the center, a stone table. On it, a young woman, restrained, unmoving. Diddy, robed in black, stood at the altar. He read aloud from a twisted scripture he had reportedly written himself, describing the woman as a gift to maintain the empire's immortality. The words were ritualistic. The mood was sinister. Alongside the video, prosecutors displayed scanned pages from Leonardo's personal journal, also recovered from the steel box. His handwriting was frantic, desperate, guilt-ridden. "I've seen too much," he wrote in 2020. "I tried to walk away, but he has footage of me at one of the parties. He threatened my family. I've collected what I can, but I don't know if I'll live long enough to make it public." Then came the most damning piece of all. A 200-page dossier titled Project Babylon, stored on a special encrypted hard drive labeled Kessler. The contents exposed a sprawling human trafficking operation that Diddy had allegedly orchestrated since 2005. The documents outlined how vulnerable young women from Eastern Europe, Africa, and South America were lured to the U.S. under false promises of modeling and music contracts. Once here, they were flown by private jet to exclusive locations, luxury safe houses, and remote party compounds where they were drugged, manipulated, and used. A flowchart showed the trafficking pipeline spanning 12 international sites from the Caribbean to Dubai to Southeast Asia. Scans of forged contracts, blackmail material, private flight logs, and chilling internal memos were all included. One map displayed Diddy's private island with a specific area labeled the Glass Cage. According to the files, it was a holding facility where victims were detained before being processed. Then, a final sentence appeared on screen, taken from one of Diddy's handwritten notes. "After use, take them to the furnace. Leave no trace." That single line stunned the room. Jurors gasped. A few covered their mouths. One even looked away, unable to watch. Diddy's daughter, sitting in the gallery, burst into tears and fled the courtroom, her sobs echoing behind her. As the final documents faded from the screen, a deafening silence hung over the courtroom. Every juror sat frozen. The weight of what they'd just seen left them pale, shaken. Some had tears in their eyes, others simply stared into space, as if struggling to process it all. At the defense table, Diddy remained motionless, but only on the surface. Observers noted his fists clenched tightly, his jaw locked in a cold fury. His eyes burned, not with guilt, but with rage. Rage that he had been exposed. Rage that his fortress was collapsing. At one point, when a particularly damning clip played, an audio exchange between Diddy and his mother, captured during a private call, he leaned over and whispered harshly to his lawyer. No one could hear the words, but the tone was unmistakable, frantic, angry, dangerous. Then the judge turned back to Brad Pitt. "Mr. Pitt," he asked, "how exactly did you come to possess this evidence?" Brad took a breath. His hands were steady now, but his voice cracked as he answered. "Leonardo gathered it all, over years, piece by piece. At first, he didn't want to believe the worst about Diddy. None of us did. But eventually, he saw it clearly. And he knew the risk. He told me, if anything ever happened to him, I needed to finish what he started." He paused, just for a second, and then said what no one expected. "Your Honor, I'm not just here to accuse Diddy." "My friend is out there somewhere," Brad continued, his voice trembling but his words unwavering. "Maybe in a cage, maybe tortured. He risked everything to collect this evidence, not just for himself, but for the hundreds of others who couldn't. I don't know if he's still alive, but I know he didn't want this to be buried. Please, please send someone to find him. Every second we wait, he might be living what we just saw on that screen." A few jurors quietly wiped away tears. The judge, grave-faced and silent, gave a firm nod and declared that an emergency motion would be filed to open an urgent investigation into Leonardo DiCaprio's disappearance. To reinforce Brad Pitt's testimony, the prosecution presented a pre-recorded video deposition from another familiar name, Adam Sandler. The courtroom, already on edge, listened in stunned silence as Sandler's voice played from the monitor. His testimony was raw, stripped of the usual comedic charm. This wasn't the actor the world knew. This was a man recounting trauma. "Diddy made me feel like I belonged to him," Sandler confessed. "Like I owed him something I could never repay. He gets inside your head, and once you're there, there's no escape." He went on to describe how Diddy manipulated him psychologically, coercing him into surreal and degrading situations, then using secretly recorded videos as blackmail. Sandler said he had been threatened multiple times with public exposure, career destruction, and even physical harm. "You think you're in control," he said, "but you're not. He traps you in a place where silence feels safer than the truth." Then came a final blow. Sandler had recovered cloud-based security footage from Diddy's private server handed over to prosecutors weeks earlier. In the video, Diddy was seen instructing a group of men to deal with an individual described as a problem and flight risk. While the identity of the target wasn't stated, prosecutors implied it could have been Leo or someone just like him trying to get out. The footage, combined with the evidence Brad brought forward, painted a complete and terrifying picture. A powerful man running a decades-long system of coercion, trafficking, and control, protected by wealth and insulated by fame. That's when the defense struck back. Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnafo, known in legal circles for his ruthless strategies, launched a counteroffensive. He stood and delivered a carefully crafted attack, his tone laced with derision. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "we are talking about Brad Pitt, an actor, a master of performance, a man who's played assassins, fighters, and heroes. How do we know this isn't his most convincing role yet?" He called into question Pitt's motives. Why had he waited a month to come forward? Why hadn't he immediately alerted the authorities when he received the USB? Why bring this spectacle to court instead of following official protocol? Is he seeking justice? Agnafo asked. Or headlines? The defense's argument momentarily stirred doubt, until the prosecution delivered the final rebuttal. They brought in forensic analysts, independent, unaffiliated experts who had authenticated the videos, the documents, the recordings. Every file was legitimate, every timestamp matched. The evidence wasn't fiction, it was real, and it was damning. As the courtroom settled, a profound silence lingered, not out of tension this time, but from sheer weight. What had begun as a high-profile celebrity trial had mutated into something far larger. A mirror held up to Hollywood's darkest corners. A reckoning decades in the making. Throughout the trial, Diddy had maintained his icy, stone-faced persona, barely blinking under pressure. But now, subtle cracks began to show. His fingers gripped the edge of the defense table so tightly his knuckles turned white. At moments, he whispered urgently to his lawyer, his jaw clenched in frustration. The empire he built on image and power was no longer untouchable. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt's presence had shifted entirely. He wasn't the man from Fight Club, Ocean's 11, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He wasn't here to entertain. He stood as a friend, a man who had chosen truth over silence, a man who risked it all, his career, his safety, his reputation, to bring the unthinkable to light. As the courtroom settled, a profound silence lingered, not out of tension this time, but from sheer weight. What had begun as a high-profile celebrity trial had mutated into something far larger. A mirror held up to Hollywood's darkest corners, a reckoning decades in the making. Throughout the trial, Diddy had maintained his icy, stone-faced persona, barely blinking under pressure. But now, subtle cracks began to show. His fingers gripped the edge of the defense table so tightly, his knuckles turned white. At moments, he whispered urgently to his lawyer, his jaw clenched in frustration. The empire he built on image and power was no longer untouchable. Will Diddy, with all his money, power, and connections, still manage to outrun justice? Will those behind him, those whose names have yet to surface, ever face the consequences? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, will Leonardo be found before it's too late? Now the world watches, and you, reading this, witnessing it unfold, you, too, must decide. Will you remain silent? Or will you speak out? Because in a world built on power and image, silence is protection, and truth is rebellion. Stay with us, because this story isn't finished.